Hi and welcome. This video is just going to briefly go over some general topics of importance that we will be discussing this week. I'm going to try to do these about once a week so you can just get a general overview of what is going on. So we're in Module 1, we're talking about Introduction to Early Childhood Development and Education. So please be sure that you have reviewed all the content in the Getting Started module. This would include the instructor bio, the syllabus, and some helpful tips with working Canvas. As always, reach out to me if you have any questions. So our objectives for this module are to provide participants with general knowledge on children's characteristics and needs from birth to age 5, general knowledge on the multiple influences on early development and learning, information highlighting child development research and theory, and a brief historical perspective on early care and education. So we are going to talk about some different types of programming because there are a variety of things that occur in the field of early childhood education. However, what is known is that many American children spend time being cared for by someone other than their parents. And usually it's a good 40 to 45 plus hours a week that children are at care. I mean, there are centers that are open from 6 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, and there are children that are there during that time period. Generally, families are going to place children in early childhood programs for 2 reasons. The first one is learning. We know that when children attend high-quality early childhood education, they do better in primary grades and have fewer behavior problems. Additionally, most families have to work. So, as I stated before, there are differences among types of programs that are out there. Listed on this slide are just some things that could be different. I mean, philosophy of program, you have centers that are Montessori, you have centers that are Reggio, you have centers that are academic-based, you have centers that are play-based. And all of these can be owned by different people and offer different programming within them. Additionally, sources of support are also different. I mean, you have centers that are nonprofit and centers that are for-profit, and they differ with how they operate because of that. Size is a thing, staff qualifications. So, for instance, we here are a Head Start program. We have different qualifications on top of licensing qualifications. Hours of operation also can differ, and so can facilities and fees. I think the important thing to note about this is that quality can also differ. So you could have programming that is really high quality and you can have program that is really low quality. And then there's a variety of options in between. I think what we're working towards is making sure that all programming in the field of early childhood education is high quality, but it doesn't always happen that way. So we are going to talk about the different types of programs that can be out there. The first one is a family child care home. So this is when care is provided by somebody other than a parent, and it's typically in the home. Generally, there are a lot of infants and toddlers in this type of care, and usually it can be somebody in your neighborhood. In the state of Colorado, family child care providers should be licensed, so they have licensing rules and regulations that they have to follow, just like a center did. They are different licensing rules and regulations, but nonetheless, they do have to follow them. Child care centers are definitely the most popular types of programming out there, and that's what most of you are probably working in right now. They were really designed to meet basic nutrition and health and safety. However, again, it goes back to that different types of program have different types of things going on in there, different supports, different philosophies, different sizes. But in general, this is the most popular type of program out there in the field of early childhood education, and the one that I think most of us are most familiar with. Montessori is another type of program, and these are centers that follow the Montessori approach. Maria Montessori founded them, and she really believed that children should be actively involved in their own learning. She stressed proper nutrition, cleanliness, manners, self-help skills. Independence is a big thing. She really cared about the environment and expected it to be prepared. There was very defined materials that go into Montessori classrooms. And yeah, this is just one type of program that is offered. Head Start is another type of programming. So Head Start is what we here at Mile High Early Learning are. It was founded in the 1960s by the federal government, and it was essentially founded to help support with the achievement gap. So we know that when children can attend high quality programming, they do better later in school, and it was actually founded to support families to help break the cycle of poverty. So therefore, parent involvement is extremely important in Head Start programming. Another type of program that a lot of us probably are familiar with as well is school-age childcare. So this is that before and after care, that wraparound care for children who are in school. You often see them in places like YMCAs or maybe some religious organizations, but sometimes they are housed out of childcare centers. And they are really there so that students have a place to go after school while families work, and they can work on homework or be in an environment with peers their own age. A parent co-op is another type of program out there, and these are preschools that are formed and ran by parents. So parents are involved. There usually is a teacher in the program. However, parents are involved in the curriculum, they're involved in the budgeting, they're involved in the recruiting, they're involved in all aspects of the program. It's really co-ran. This can be nice because you have lots of people in your classroom for support, but also it can have its downside too because your parents are extremely involved in your programming, and sometimes that can cause some confusion or some stress in the classroom. Lab schools are another type of program. So these are generally located on college campuses and are affiliated with the college campuses. And their primary goal is to support practicum experiences for future teachers and research. So lab schools generally have a master teacher in there, but then they also have practicum students who are coming in who more than likely go to that college and are trying to gain experience in the field while working under a master teacher. In Colorado, I believe we only have one lab school, and that's actually at CSU up in Fort Collins. A lot of people think that the Auraria Learning Center on Metro's campus is a lab school, but it's actually not. But yes, they do have one up at CSU. So I touched briefly on this, but there are a couple different types of sponsorship in programs. Public sponsorships are essentially when you are receiving funding from outside sources. That would be like a Head Start, a public university, a publicly funded preschool, lab schools, or even a preschool inside of a high school. Private sponsorship means that your center is owned privately, and that you are receiving funding primarily from parents, meaning that they are paying tuition and fees, and that is funding your center. On top of this sponsorship of funding, there is generally two types. So there's for-profit and nonprofit. So a for-profit center is generally going to be your private centers. You're going to rely heavily on parent fees to cover those expenses. You need to have lots of kids enrolled in your program. You usually have a central administration team, and you're usually either privately owned or part of a corporation. Nonprofit centers are often sponsored by outside agencies, and they are in operation for charitable purposes. They also are eligible for government funding and usually receive a lot of government funding in outside sources like grants. Typically, they're there to provide care for families who may not be able to afford it, and all profits are returned to the organization. So Head Starts generally are nonprofit. You can think of like a KinderCare or a Goddard being a for-profit center. Sometimes there are some centers that are sponsored by their employer, meaning that employees can send their child there and usually their costs are covered, or they offer vouchers to cover care. These centers are usually located on site or very nearby, and they sometimes are partnered with other organizations. But this too has its advantages and disadvantages. And I rarely see these. I have seen one. There was an employee-sponsored child care program that was affiliated with the hospital. And so the hospital was on top of the hill, the child care center is at the bottom, and parents used like a train to get back and forth between the two. Universal pre-kindergarten is another type of programming that's out there. This is sponsored usually at the state level. These are usually attached to public K through 12 schools, but they really are designed to support with the transition into kindergarten. However, it is highly dependent upon quality. We are going to ultimately talk about licensing rules and regulations a lot in this course and do some activities around that. So in the state of Colorado, the child care licensing rules and regulations really exist to promote a safe and healthy environment for out-of-home care for children. You need a license to operate in the state of Colorado if you are doing childcare, whether it's a family childcare center, before and after, whatever it is, you need a license. The Office of Early Childhood website is where you find this information, but we are going to talk about licensing as we work through. So NAEYC is another type of center accreditation that goes above and beyond licensing. So licensing is that you've met the basic standards of quality. NAEYC is something that goes beyond that, and it's an indicator of high quality programming in early childhood. The NAEYC website is wonderful and phenomenal. I highly suggest that you guys all go there and get acquainted with it. There are a ton of resources on it. It's really meant for teachers, for parents, for programs, and we are going to talk about NAEYC a lot in the course of this training. On top of NAEYC, the state of Colorado has their own quality rating improvement system. It is Colorado Shines. If you're not aware of it, I would suggest doing some research around Colorado Shines also. Colorado Shines in so Qualistar used to essentially be what the state used as a quality rating system. Qualistar has now gone away, and it is now Colorado Shines. It is the diamonds, if you guys have seen them, and so the highest level that you can get is a 5, the lowest level you can get is a 1. Most centers are usually right around that 4 mark. We have a few centers in the state of Colorado that are at a 5, but it's very few of them that actually are. Additionally, we are going to talk about PDIS in this course, and that is something else too that if you are not familiar with, I would strongly suggest looking up the Professional Development Information System, creating a profile, but we are going to talk about what that looks like as we work through this training. Some other things in the field of early childhood education that I think that you should be aware of is ITERs and ECHRs, because they are also tools like NAEYC, like Colorado Shines, that can be used as indicators of quality. So the ECHRs and ITERs usually generally just looks at the physical environment of a classroom and not necessarily the interactions that are going on, although there are some pieces in there. So essentially what this manual does is it shows you what should be in a classroom, materials-wise, in order for it to be high quality. This is, again, another tool that if you're not familiar with, I would strongly suggest doing a little bit of research around. So that's going to be this video for this week. We're going to continue to look at what quality looks like in the field of early childhood education. Please do your reading. Make sure that you're working through the assignments for this week, and reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks.